With respect to the franchise fee resolution, or sorry, with respect to the fee resolution, the proposal, as I said, would be to reference the gross revenues definition in the ordinance. The bigger proposal would be, if you want to create a level playing field, our proposal would be to set all those fees at 5%, rather than having some be at 7 and some be at 5. And that would have to be, to make it fair, extended to existing franchises as well. But what's important to understand is that in the past, even if everyone was at 7%, everyone but Canby-Tell was paying 7% of all their revenues, and Canby-Tell was paying 7% of just less than all of, probably, I don't have their financials in front of me either, but probably between a third and a half of their revenues. And so whatever you do, I would urge you to make it equitable among competitive providers and the incumbent, so that you can have lots of choices for businesses in Canby, for residents of Canby who want a choice of carriers when looking for telephone service. I really appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight, to go over these changes with you. I would be very happy to answer any questions that you have, Mayor, and I'll end my remarks there to let you ask those.
Well, first, Joe, any comments on?
Well, I could say, yeah, the idea between specifically enumerating the chapter of the CFR, the federal code, versus saying just federal law in general. I think federal law encapsulates more. It encapsulates arguably case law that may, apply across several chapters. So, I mean, I think it's actually more to say federal law than it is just to say one chapter, and that chapter may change. And so that's the reasoning there. The idea of saying internet or no internet, we have covered in past meetings, but the idea is currently under a couple of different acts, federal and state, the internet is, access to the internet is not taxable. And that's fine, and we have said it's applicable to that limitation of federal and state law. If that were to change, we would want our document to be skeleton enough and to basically account for the fact that that changed. I don't see that it will necessarily. It's very doubtful, but say those things sunset, then we don't have to necessarily go back and take out our enumerations just because we felt better about having specificity in it. And finally, about backing those fees out and the double taxation idea. And I know one of your suggestions was putting a phrase something like generally accepted accounting principles. I know we've had discussions, and you guys should understand that there is generally acceptable accounting principles, and those can be used and argued at the level of when you're paying your bill. You can say, no, our revenues really were only $10 on that $110. And here's why, and that's the way these things work. So, what I want to be careful of is not putting in our definitions, having all sorts of things on top of each other, when the reality is it's the same. When you hand in your bill, you can say, our revenue really was only $10 on that exchange.
I appreciate your thoughtful responses to the points, and I certainly appreciate your point about the reference to federal law, and I think you understand what, I can tell that you understand our concerns. I guess I have two questions. One is, with respect to the internet access, yes, if the Oregon Internet Tax Freedom Act is repealed at some point, if the council wants to tax the internet, then you could go back and have to take something out if you say right now that you're not going to tax it expressly. My impression has always been that the council has no intention of taxing the internet, in which case, if the Internet Tax Freedom Act disappears, you wouldn't have to make any change to the ordinance because you'd presumably still not be trying to tax the internet. So, it's a really question of what the intent is. My understanding has always been there's no intent to tax internet access or Wi-Fi or any other internet services. I guess with respect to backing out wholesale payments from revenues, I mean, I guess I'll respectfully disagree that there'd be, under generally accepted accounting principles, a way to say there's no revenue. I mean, if the money comes in the door, and I am not an accountant, but my understanding would be if the money comes in the door, you count it as revenue. It's not going to be profit, but it's money coming in the door, it would be revenue. And so the concern would be this would at least lead maybe a different city attorney and a different person at the carrier and a different council down the road to think, oh, yeah, you got to pay on all the wholesale revenue and you don't get to back out the price you paid to provide that service. So, you know, I think in the interest of clarity, and really clarity is where these changes are coming from, because I think the intent is laudable, and the intent of the entire ordinance to have a more level playing field is laudable, but these are our suggestions to, I guess, perfect what you're trying to do here, or at least get it closer to what that intent is.
Okay. And there was one more, I guess, comment too that I could or should respond to, which is the idea of it might indeed be a more elegant ordinance if it had the gross revenues definition in it. One of the things that the council asked me to do was basically, you know, go for 4 areas of change in the ordinance and see which ones you wanted to vote on. That was not one of them. We hadn't had it in the past. And so the reason it appears now and purely, you know, legal to be there, but it's showing up in a resolution because it doesn't exist in the ordinance as passed. And so it needed to be there for folks like the right-of-way use fee folks who don't have a franchise agreement so that they don't know exactly expressly what the definition is, so that's why it shows up here. But yeah, it's one of those things that, while potentially that would have been a nice definition to be in there, it hasn't been in there yet. And so this was a way for me to make sure that it applied to folks who don't have it in their agreements, but that it's the exact same wording that are in all of the franchise agreements anyway.
Joe,
Yeah.
I kind of watched the council kind of glaze over during that explanation. Can you
Say it again?
Yeah, say it and unpack it for us, please.
Okay, well, the idea is, one of the complaints was, it would just be better to have gross revenues defined in the ordinance. Currently, they're not, surprisingly, defined in the ordinance. They haven't been under the old model. The suggested League of Oregon Cities didn't necessarily put those in the new model either. What we've had and what we've operated under is that definition always gets added to the franchise agreements. But now we're adding a few extra pieces. One of them is the right-of-way use folks. And that idea is if somebody doesn't have a franchise agreement, but they're in our ground, they're going to have to pay 7% of gross revenues. Well, since they don't have a piece of paper that defines that, I made sure that the resolution defines it the same exact way all these other franchises do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Much better the second time. Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
thanks, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I get verbose.
No, that's all right. Well, it's lawyers speaking to lawyers.
Yeah.
It's much like when we had a, financial workshop and our city, finance director is using three-letter acronyms, or three-letter, abbreviations and acronyms, that we have to stop her and regroup and get that clarity. So thank you for that. Yes.
That gross revenues definition isn't in the ordinance that we're doing on second reading tonight either.
That's what
Okay,
we were
so-
saying. Yeah.
So what we're saying then is we can't add it, we'd have to be back at first reading again?
Well, if we were to add it, we would be back at first reading.
Okay.
I mean, you could choose to add it if you wanted, but it would take it back to first reading. So we just then have second reading next time.
Wouldn't be until.
Yes, sir.
As I recall, one of the reasons that you did put that definition in the fee schedule in the resolution, though, is because you were also under direction, as you mentioned, to keep it skeletal, and that there is the possibility that the definition of gross revenue can change at a higher legislative level, right?
Yes.
And that kept us in the flexibility of not changing an ordinance, but dealing with the resolution on an as-needed basis?
Yes.
Okay, so that's also one.
And thank you for that add-on.
I'm half your rate.
Would you say half his rate?
Half his rate, yeah. I can't practice law in Oregon, so. Or any other state, I think. Yeah, Texas. It's not just Oregon.
Jailhouse.
On the internet access fee, are you as our attorney comfortable that that is excluded?
Yeah, I mean, we can't, even if you wanted to, if the intent was to charge for internet access, you cannot under federal or state law right now. You know,
I mean, that's correct. I'll second that.
And so, I've got all these attorneys.
so we don't even have to say it. We can't do it.
We need to make note that they agreed.
And that truly is internet access, it's not IP-based services.
Internet access is defined under the Oregon Internet Tax Freedom Act. There's a long and complicated history, but it is a very broad definition. It was defined originally to model the definition in the federal Internet Tax Freedom Act. That act has been since amended several times, and the Oregon version has not. So the understanding is that the Oregon definition remains the original very broad federal definition, while the federal Internet Tax Freedom Act actually now has a somewhat narrower definition.
So I was just looking for, is it truly internet access versus talk about soft switches and other things that are carried over IP technology?
I mean, I guess, also my answer is I don't know exactly what you're getting at, but I think it would include more than just like a dial-up internet access or even a DSL internet access, what you might typically think of the words internet access to mean, but is less than the whole universe that touches an internet technology.
That's, I think, where we were going there. You're comfortable, sir?
Well, and this is why the language applicable to all federal and state law is actually more elegant.
On the issue, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just, go ahead and finish your questions. Any questions for the proponents / opponents?
Not directly.
Not directly. Okay, so let's close that out.
Some for
Okay, we'll
Close out the public hearing.
we will close out the public hearing piece and then move into any questions by us of staff or clarifiers. Okay, does that work?
You bet.
All right, so feel free to ask away.
Okay. On the double taxation question, and I see we have our finance director here too. Oh, so many lawyers and CPAs, it's great. It's an interesting two-sided argument. You know, on one hand, you can argue that in terms of cash flowing through the system, there's really only 110 bucks. There's 210 bucks in revenue getting declared and taxed. And so you get this funny case where if you go on a totally revenue-based model, although there's only $110 flowing through the system, we're getting a double bite. We're getting a little bit more than a double bite. We're getting $10.50. Okay, on the other hand, so I understand the argument of way that they want more of a value add, but that then messes with our definition of gross revenue, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because now we are suddenly going to start deducting the cost of doing business, which we've explicitly tried to keep out of our definition, right? That makes sense? Okay.
Yes.
So, and that kind of, my question is that, does that tie in with 221-515 and 403-105? Was part of the intent of that capping that happens for the incumbent, was the legislative intent to help recognize that the incumbent has made a great capital investment in putting in infrastructure, and there's a bit of a reward or recognition of that to give them a break for that, whereas the wholesale purchaser, the reseller, comes in, does not make that investment, But arguably, in a value-added model, you wind up with the incumbent paying this high tax rate. The value-add reseller only pays on his incremental profit. And so you have this big burden that's on the incumbent, whereas the reseller effectively gets a better profit margin.
Well, but I can't answer that question specifically, but you go back to the double taxation issue, and if you look at, the $210 exchanges hands, and like you said, you're going to have to change the definition of gross revenue if you do that. But I think if you talk to Canby Telephone, they're going to tell you that they've got $1 or $2 invested in that $100 worth that they're reselling. That's not free to them either. And they have a cost involved in that, as does the reseller, which would be Wave, if using them as an example. So, what's the profit they made? The gross revenue is $210, and that's what our definition is. If you want to start, parsing this, you'd have to, I think, change that definition. And like I say, I think Paul would tell you that it's going to cost Canby Tel a few bucks to provide that $100 worth of resale to Wave or any other carrier.
Yeah, and that's what I'm poking as. The incumbent has this huge capital investment
Exactly.
they've made, whereas the reseller doesn't.
Well, I wanted to point that out.
Well, my understanding of the legislative intent, and I don't absolutely know it, but I understand that it was some sort of compromise, basically, with that sort of thing in mind. If you can get inside the head of the legislature.
Which is always hard to do.
Yeah. The changing hydra that is the legislature. But yeah, I believe that was the intent behind it. I know, and people in the audience could speak to this, is that is probably a special session idea that is potentially coming up to change currently in the February session, so. Yeah.
That's correct. I would like to remain that the competitors have massive investment and build their own facilities. They don't just resell the incumbent. Sometimes they might, but they do invest heavily in their own.
No, I recognize that.
Well, one of the unintended consequences, if you do that, what does then the incumbent that's reselling that call his gross revenue?
Exactly.
Where, and I guess the other question that you might ask is, where do they sell it? I mean, because if they're selling it here, they have the privilege of doing business here in town, right? Which is different. I mean, I'm not sure how often they sell right here versus buy and sell elsewhere. It's a big world.
So in the end, Mr. Mayor, I'm not advocating a change in the structure.
Sure.
I think it's recognizing the incumbent investment. It's a clean definition. I'm not advocating we change the definition of gross revenue.
You're just trying to clarify.
Just trying to clarify and point out that in the case of double taxation, the government is taking a larger slice of the actual dollars flowing through, but I argue the playing field stays level between the two parties independent of each other.
Yeah, it's double taxation is really only a miserable idea if it occurs to the same person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, just jotting a note here. Okay. Any other questions for Joe or discussion points? And Joe, the way I, talking earlier, discussed it, so a couple of options when we get to this in the resolutions and ordinances for the council to be thinking about is to pass it as written, that change the numbers within, in any capacity within what we've got laid out here, correct? So whether that be the application fee, registration fee, or those percentages, if that's our so desired, we can do that as well. And then, or we can table the conversation for, if we're still having more questions or we feel that we've not come far enough in our conversation to make a decision, so.
That's accurate, and you could table, just say the resolution and have second reading of the ordinance if you wanted, or, both if you wanted.
All right. So we'll take that as it is until we get to that point.
And I think I would reiterate, and this follows the not changing of the definition of revenues is that all people who have heretofore had a franchise and have applied and negotiated and are getting a franchise at second reading tonight have pretty much the same definition of gross revenues. So I mean, it isn't a change from what they bargained for anyway.
Yeah, to me, that's the key, is that they all are operating independently, regardless of whether or not they're wholesalers of each other. They still operate independently. So,
Counselor Parker?
I was wondering if you wanted to see if our finance director had any clarification she wished to offer.
Well, sure. Haley, do you have any insight or thought?
I actually think that Counselor Gale did a very good job of explaining that. But from an accounting perspective, the term gross revenue would mean the 110 and not the 10 from an accounting perspective generally.
New vocation there, Tim.
Okay. Well, thank you, guys. We will come up with the resolution ordinance piece here in a little bit, because we have a second public hearing here. Kim, as a matter of protocol, do I need to reread that or just go through the process of, okay? So our second public hearing this evening is regarding fees for payroll and self-employment tax payments submitted without corresponding tax returns. So we, same rules and whatnot apply for the first one. So we will do a staff report, questions by us of staff, and then we will open it up for public hearing and testimony. Again, we'll have proponents first, and then opponents. We will close the public testimony, questions by the hearing body, if any, and then discussion by the hearing body. So with that, we will do the staff report. Haley.
All right, so later we have an ordinance coming up that will clarify, that's mostly administrative, but we are proposing this fee-through resolution that is an administrative fee meant to recover the cost of staff time and resources expended following up on payments submitted without a return. So currently, in the process, you already get a fee if you don't, you get a penalty and interest if you don't submit any payment or a return. But when some people send in checks without a corresponding return, and the return is really the official record that substantiates the amount is owed, because this tax is a self-reported tax. And it's actually, one, there to protect us as the government so that we can substantiate that that money is owed to us. And two, it's there to protect the payer, because we can then verify that it was calculated correctly. And being that it's .006, that decimal point gets confused and is calculated wrong on various occasions. So it really is there, that return is essential to substantiating for both parties what is owed. And we spend a lot of time and effort following up on these through phone calls and letters, which all cost time and money. So really the intent is just to recover some of that cost and to deter people from submitting payments without a return.
Do we have a regular, I guess, quote unquote violators of this?
I do know that we have this occur a lot. Whether or not it's always the same people, I could not give you that statistic currently.
Okay. And so how soon are we looking to, I guess, start going and assessing this towards?
So this would be effective with the resolution, I believe, or with the ordinance, which is in first reading tonight. But with that, we would hope second reading would pass on the 4th, and then it would become effective. So we would be updating our brochures for the year-end mailing of the returns.
Okay. Any questions for Amelia, though?
No, actually, I just wanted to point out in our conversation that those errors that she talks about are often overpayments because of that decimal point. So it would protect the business owners a little bit to have that return attached to their check.
So they've been paying too much. Okay.
Is it
And we
6%
would
instead
know.
of 0.6?
And we would .006, is it? What is
I
it?
think it's 0.6% versus a lot of people pay 6%.
Yeah, 0.6%, so yeah, they're putting the decimal point in the wrong place, so.
Well, we have the chamber director in the room, and I have been at a number of chamber board meetings where CAT comes up as a conversation piece, and so maybe we remind those board members that maybe it's, the decimal point might be in the wrong spot if they're feeling that strongly about the topic. I will leave it at that.
Math matters.
Math matters.
As the telecommunications group will tell us. Any other comments for Haley?
No, no,
Great,
no.
thank you, Haley.
Thank you, Haley.
So I will open up the public hearing. Any proponents on the matter? Any opponents on the matter? Seeing Ms. Doolittle, the chamber director, coming towards the
Which side of
microphone.
the fence was that,
I
proponent
just
or
have
opponent?
a comment statement is all that I have this evening on this. I would just ask that before this gets put into place to the businesses, that there was ample notification sent out so that they are aware of it ahead of time and prepared and not just all of a sudden get their fine attached on. So that's all that I'm asking, is that you please take the time to prepare and let people know that this is coming.
Haley, what is the strategy?
So like I said, we are, assuming this all passes, we want to update all of our flyers and brochures that we send out with every tax return that then gets sent back, hopefully. Well, the goal is to encourage it to come back.
Yes.
So they would be notified with the blank return that they get to fill out.
Can we coordinate between us and the chamber to maybe something in
Well, I
a
don't want
newsletter? Pardon me?
I'm not
We would
billing.
also provide-
No, I'm not, I'm just meant in terms of communication.
Communication.
Yes, we would be happy to put a notice in the letter, in our newsletter, weekly email. So is it my understanding, if the resolution passes, it's first reading this evening, second reading, and then there's 30 days from the second reading?
No.
Is
No.
that-
Is there an emergency clause?
Is there?
Oh, there's an emergency clause in
If
there?
there is an emergency clause,
I didn't notice.
The ordinance takes effect 30 days from the date.
There's no emergency clause.
Okay, so it takes effect 30 days from the
second
second
reading.
reading.
Second
So
reading,
that,
right.
we should be able to get ample information out and prepare the businesses to know that they're either overpaying or, need to follow some more guidelines. I'd be happy to work with the city on getting that notice out.
Okay, Kim?
Because this is a new fee, it's also published in the paper. There's a special notice by law that we have to publish regarding that, so.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Haley. All right. Taking care of both of those. We will move into resolutions and, sorry,
Did you close them?
I did not. I need to close the public hearing. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? I got all
None,
excited to
none.
continue. No? All right. Thank you all. We will now move into resolutions and ordinances.
Okay, the first resolution we have is Resolution 1177. This is setting fees for telecommunications providers under County Municipal Code, Chapter 12.36.
Okay, so we have had that conversation this evening. Comments, questions, thoughts?
Yes.
Please feel free.
All of the above, or?
I'm, in terms of the ordinance itself, I like the structure, I like it, I'm in favor of second reading. In terms of the fee resolution, I am interested in exploring an adjustment on the percentage rate. Granted, tonight might not be the night to figure out what the numbers really are, but it looks on the face of it like by rolling from a 5% to a 4%, we would effectively keep the incumbent, I don't know about Wade, but the incumbent at a pretty much a no net change. And that interests me, on the registration fee.
Agreed.
I concur. Yep. Okay.
What I'm weak on is, do we just do that ourselves, or do we need to refer that to staff to?
My understanding
You
from our
could, you could change it and just offer it with that change. And
Approve it
vote on
tonight
it
as
tonight if you
4%.
want. If you sound like you hear consensus.
That's a great idea. So I'm hearing that changing the registration fee from 5% of gross revenues to 4%
On the registration.
on the
yes.
annual registration fee, correct?
If I did the math right, it looks like that keeps everything neutral.
I trust you.
You did the math whiz.
Any other,
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
we would agree to that, just for the point, our estimates is that that would be a slight increase of about $1,200 to be exact.
okay. Thank you, sir. Any other recommendations or changes?
I like that one.
I'm good.
So we have a proposed change on the resolution, so I'll take a motion on that. Counselor Dale?
Do we, if I can ask him, do we need to move on the resolution, then move on the amendment?
You could just say as amended, since
Okay.
you've already talked about it.
So, Mr. Mayor, I move for Resolution 1177, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Canby, Oregon, setting fees for the telecommunications provider under Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 12.36, as amended.
So a motion made by Counselor Dale. Take a second. Second. Second by Counselor Coleman. To accept Resolution 1177, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Canby, Oregon, setting fees for telecommunications providers under Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 12.36, as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, passes 6-0.
Okay, the next item we have is Resolution 1178. This is setting fees for payroll and self-employment tax payments submitted without a corresponding tax return.
All right, we heard that from Haley. Any other comments or questions for our Finance Director at this point?
So in addition to the fee, which we've already discussed, there are some administrative clarifications that will allow us to administer it more cleanly, and it corrects some inconsistencies throughout, like the reference to the local area, the local transit area versus in some places that was referred to as the city, but those areas, according to the definition within the ordinance, are different. So
That's language in the new ordinance later on the agenda, right? Not in the franchise or the resolution?
That's my
right now?
No, it's language in the ordinance that has been
Right.
updated and corrected to be consistent throughout the document.
Okay, but we're on the resolution right now.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, I just wanted to clarify that that's on the ordinance that you're talking about,
Yes.
not in this piece. Okay. I was like, what language? Just wanted to clarify.
Yes, sir.
Good job, Tracy.
I just had a question for you. So if I understand this correctly, say a business is operating and doing their quarterly taxes through their CPA or bookkeeper, and they get these quarterly, slips to turn in, that's sufficient, not a elaborate tax return?
Most of the tax return is quite simple, but all of the payroll providers, like ADP and stuff, they're familiar with our system and they do submit sufficient returns.
Okay.
So those don't have any risk that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So we'll take a motion for the resolution then.
All right, no one else wants to? Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve a resolution of the number 1178, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Canby, Oregon, setting fees for payroll and self-employment tax payments submitted without a corresponding tax return.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Counselor Hensley, second by Counselor Ryder, to approve Resolution 1178, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Canby, Oregon, setting fees for payroll and self-employment tax payments submitted without a corresponding tax return. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 6-0.
Okay, the next item we have, this is before you for second reading, is ordinance 1387. This is amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 12, Section 12.36, telecommunications facilities.
Okay, and this is a hot topic from 2 weeks ago, and so basically amending that and creating a tighter skeleton, if you will. So, and this will be a correct roll call. Thank you. So if I can have a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, sir.
That we approve ordinance 1387, amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 12, Section 12.36, telecommunications facilities.
Thank you, sir. And a second?
Second that.
Thank you. Motion by Counselor Rocha, second by Counselor Coleman to approve ordinance 1387, amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 12, Section 12.36, telecommunications facilities, second reading with roll call vote.
Counselor Rocha?
Aye.
Counselor Hensley?
Aye.
Counselor Coleman?
Aye.
Counselor Dale?
Yes.
Counselor Parker?
Yes.
Counselor Ryder?
Yes.
Carries 6-0.
Okay, the next item we have is ordinance 1388. This is granting to Clackamas County a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network and provide telecommunications services within the city of Canby, Oregon. And this is also before you for second reading.
Kim? Take a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move for ordinance number 1388, an ordinance granting to Clackamas County, a political subdivision of the state of Oregon, a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network and provide telecommunications services within the city of Canby, Oregon, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, sir. I'll take a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. So motion's been made and seconded by Counselor Dale, seconded by Counselor Rocha to approve ordinance 1388, granting to Clackamas County a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network and provide telecommunications services within the city of Canby, Oregon. Second reading and roll call vote.
Counselor Rocha?
Yes.
Counselor Hensley?
Aye.
Counselor Coleman?
Yes.
Counselor Dale?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Yes.
Counselor Ryder?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is ordinance 1389. This is also before you for second reading. This is granting to TW Telecom of Oregon LLC a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network and provide telecommunications services within the city of Canby, Oregon.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adopt ordinance number 1389, an ordinance granting to TW Telecom of Oregon LLC, TWTC, a Delaware limited liability company, a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network and provide telecommunications services within the city of Canby, Oregon, and declaring an emergency.
Great.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Counselor Hensley, seconded by Counselor Dale to approve ordinance number 1389, an ordinance granting to TW Telecom of Oregon LLC, TWTC, a Delaware limited liability company, a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications network and provide telecommunications services within the city of Canby, Oregon, and declaring emergency.
Counselor Rocha?
Yes.
Counselor Hensley?
Aye.
Counselor Coleman?
Yes.
Counselor Dale?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Yes.
Counselor Ryder?
Yes.
He wasn't getting the pattern.
Carries 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is ordinance 1390. This is also before you for second reading. This is authorizing a contract with Hubbard Chevrolet of Hubbard, Auto Additions of Salem, and Ford Motor Credit Corporation for the lease purchase of two 2014 Chevrolet Tahoes with police equipment packages.
So this is a review. We had talked about this 2 weeks ago. Standard vehicle replacement for the police, and we're moving away from the, in this case, the Chargers to the larger Tahoes to carry its payload and equipment. So
Okay.
the larger payload that we have.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move we adopt ordinance number 1390, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and city administrator to execute a contract with Hubbard Chevrolet of Hubbard, Oregon, Auto Additions of Salem, Oregon, and Ford Motor Credit Corporation for the lease purchase of two 2014 Chevrolet Tahoes with police equipment packages for the Canby Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Take a second.
Second, sir.
Thank you. Motion made by Counselor Hensley and seconded by Counselor Dale to approve ordinance number 1390, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and city administrator to execute a contract with Hubbard Chevrolet of Hubbard, Oregon, Auto Additions of Salem, Oregon, and Ford Motor Credit Corporation for the lease purchase of two 2014 Chevrolet Tahoes with police equipment packages for the Canby Police Department and declaring an emergency. And second reading, roll call vote.
Counselor Rocha?
Aye.
Counselor Hensley?
Yes.
Counselor Coleman?
Yes.
Counselor Dale?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Yes.
Counselor Ryder?
Carried 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is ordinance 1391. This is amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 3.24, Public Transportation Payroll and Self-Employment Tax. And our finance director will present this.
Thank you.
We've seen a lot of you.
I know. It's a good thing I'm cute.
That's right.
So I seem to have gone ahead of myself before. And most of the changes to the ordinance are administrative to clarify our role and to help us administrate it more easily and to make it consistent throughout the document. The other thing I would like to note is that I would like to propose that we pass it on first reading with a slight change to the wording on page 49 of the packet. I'd like to change 3.24130E from stating the actual fee to say a fee as set by resolution should a taxpayer remit, and then scratch the last sentence so that the fee stays within the resolution and not within the ordinance.
Is the maximum in the resolution as well?
Yes.
Great.
And
Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I move for passage of Resolution 1177, which is the wrong one.
It's actually
Ordinance 1391.
Yeah. I needed to get my
Page
act
42.
together. Somebody else should have done it. Mr. Mayor, I move for ordinance number 1391, an ordinance amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 3.24, Public Transportation Payroll and Self-Employment Tax as amended.
My second.
Thank you. Vote. Motion made by Counselor Dale, second by Counselor Hensley to approve ordinance number 1391, an ordinance amending Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 3.24, Public Transportation Payroll and Self-Employment Tax as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you, Kim. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is new business. The first item is a memorandum of understanding with Canby Livability Coalition.
And did you, sir, want to come and address this?
Yes, I would.
Oh, okay. I forget your name.
Bob.
Okay.
Just to identify myself, I'm Bob Tice. I live at 401 Northwest Territorial Road here in Canby. I'm also the president of the Canby Livability Coalition, who I'm representing here tonight. Excuse me. Some of you have been around long enough to know that Canby Livability Coalition entered into an agreement with the city a few years ago to, first of all, to purchase a lot in the Territorial Estates subdivision that's on the corner of Territorial and Hawley Street. And part of the first MOU that we had was to donate about half the cost of the city exercising an option that the developer gave them to purchase that lot, which we did in November of 2006. Subsequent to that, we entered into a second MOU to develop the park. And we had some dates set there to move forward with that, but as everything, it was contingent upon funding and us raising the money, which we were not able to do in that particular time frame. And we entered into the MOU 3, which basically just extended the dates. Again, that was in the middle of the recession that we've had, and again, we have not been able to fully meet the funding requirements to do that, so we are back before you with MOU 4 to do that. I believe you probably have a copy of the MOU, and over the last few weeks, we've been trying to settle some things that would actually modify this a little bit, and I can tell you what those are. and we can decide where to go from there. But basically, if you look at item number 2, as listed on the first page, it says that the master park design, which is the design of the park that we're doing, will be presented to the Canby Parks and Rec Advisory Board for approval, and once that approval is obtained, the CLC shall seek funds to develop for the park. We believe that it was completed in October of 2009, and we have been trying to confirm that with Matilda. That is actually stated that way in the Park and Rec board minutes. We have not been able to do that with Matilda yet. One of our members was trying to contact her and has not been able to do that. So that's one change we would like to make. And we would probably include a statement to the fact that it is approved, and we would request that it would be placed on the Canby Park master plan as an item in the master plan. So the second change is on the second page near the top, which is item D under the third thing, which says the CLC shall be responsible for regular maintenance and cleanup of the area beginning upon the date of this agreement. Well, in reading this, we said, okay, that sounds like it's forever. And, I'll give you an example. If for some reason or other we did not continue with this process and this thing expired, we would still be on the hook to maintain that lot. Plus, into the future, someday that the members of the current CLC may no longer be around, and it needs to eventually go into city control of maintenance of the park once it's developed. So we would want to change something and put a statement in there to that effect. So that's the changes. Everything else, the dates and so on, although they're still a stretch for us in some ways, we've been discussing several ways to do that. And one of the things, we've been talking to Greg Ellis and Mayor Hudson, and some ideas that we had in terms of dealing with the bike community and how we could bring them into this. And we met with the board chairman of the bike committee here in town, and been working with him. So those are some ideas of how to go forward with this. But right now we we don't have that plan in place. So I guess what I'd like to see right now is seek your guidance in, do we want to do something right here, right now with what we have, or do we want to basically allow us time to make these changes we want to and postpone this for a month?
Mr. Mayor?
Well, I appreciate you, Bob, coming and bringing this up, and I think it sounds like staff has to do some homework, at least on item 2.
Mm-hmm.
We still have not gotten that information clarified, so I think we need to do that first.
Let me say this, Mr. Mayor, and sorry to interrupt, but as to that point, this really is something that your contracting agent, the administrator, could sign, given your blessing, basically. So it's kind of before you with this idea. It's the 4th version. It's almost identical to all the other versions except for the dates.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of carried on. But if there needs to be tweaks, because the dates are somewhat now since 2002, yeah, I think staff can do that, and then with your blessing, with basically the changes and the spirit of the changes that you're hearing, you can just authorize your contracting agent, and it doesn't have to come back before you again.
And I think it does need some work, not maybe the wording, but instead of top-down to the Parks and Rec, this should be before the Parks and Rec and bring it back up.
That's that's what I think as well. I think
see that also, Mr. Tice.
I think that dialogue piece from there to us, I think is appropriate.
I have one question.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure who to ask, so since Mr. Tice is here, maybe he's the one to ask. I don't have any problem with the changes that you're proposing. It sounds totally reasonable. My only question when I read through this in the first place was the paragraph that said, we'll work in conjunction with the Clackamas County Arts Action Alliance to continue developing. I'm just curious why the Clackamas County Arts Action Alliance is the body that we're using to guide you. I do know that the Main Street program is putting together a Canby Arts Alliance, and I'm wondering if maybe more local control would be better for your project.
Well, part of that is historical, in that when we first started the project, we did work with the Clackamas County Arts Alliance people, and they gave us some real guidance in developing some of the guidelines we needed to be able to solicit from the art community. And, if we have no problem with, integrating more with the the Canby. We've always worked with the Canby Arts Association.
Sure.
And they've been members of some of our subcommittees when we did the original design of the park. But, we can go forward and work with whoever. Our intent is to work with, city people and to
Sure.
make it, it's a city park, so it's.
Right, and it's a new committee that's being formed, and the Canby Arts Association is part of that. Clint and I both serve on the design committee, so we were talking about getting this Arts Action Alliance started, and so I would just maybe encourage you to reach out to them when they get fully formed and have a little bit more.
Who would be a contact, or?
Laura Sattler.
Laura, okay.
Maybe that's an and phrase put into the,
Yeah, maybe
to encompass both until the Canby,
until they're fully formed.
until they're fully formed.
Okay.
So
well,
as far as I know, I think we kind of anointed her the chair of that committee, didn't we? So you could contact Laura.
Okay, yeah, I know Laura, so I'll contact her.
Councilor Parker, do you have something?
Yeah, I just, for the record, wanted to say that how much I appreciate the efforts, that this is something that's taken longer than we thought, but it's a neat thing that we're taking something that government's always done in the past, and citizens are trying to step forward and do it. So it has my support and my patience for as long as it takes to do this, so.
Appreciate that.
I agree, Canby Livability Coalition has done a lot, and the park is a piece of it, to the flower baskets, just to the playing into the livability of Canby, so we appreciate the group. And
And if there's any questions from the council about who we are, what we do, I know some of you know who we are and have been involved with this, but maybe there's somebody who doesn't.
there's a few new faces up here, but if there's anything, so Greg, I think, we'll work with Parks and Rec and have it maybe start there and flush these pieces out and get their approval, and then bring it back to us, I think is probably the best move for us. So, yes, sir?
And one other thing, is the liaison to the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, we are very interested in the idea of whatever we can do, because part of our vision is having a bike freeway that comes across the Canby Ferry with a bunch of people riding $3,000 bicycles and coming into town with their disposable incomes. And we see the art park there as being a logical guidepost there because of its geography. So to the extent that we can marry together those two visions, we're very interested.
And that was the main reason, and we also looked at it from the standpoint of, we can broaden the base of going out and ask for grants. It's just another way of approaching it, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll get in touch with Greg and go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Price.
I don't think it'll give them Spanish.
Next piece of new business is discussion regarding the Civic Building and the voter referral. So the Urban Renewal District had, with conversation with the Library Board a month ago, has it been a month or more than that?
The previous month.
So, a previous month to discuss having the project sent out for a referral vote to the voters, and so it is now on our plate to direct Joe for language around that, and how we would piece that together, and what pieces of that do we need to include, what is our role in that aspect of that, putting that together,
Well,
and verbiage.
I would say this, I believe I was looking at Oregon Live today, and there was a library in Cornelius that was rejected by voters in a special election. And what the article was saying was they expected for the voter turnout for the general election to be somewhere around 50%. So they thought, because the special election only had like 22% responding or something like that, and it was a close enough vote that they were hopeful that when it went to the general election, that then the 50% would kind of speak a voice that was a little bit more attuned with what they thought the community really wanted. The reason I'm saying this is because they're projecting 50% of the voters will actually vote in the election. So what you're going to hear from is half the people out there at best, maybe, right, for this. And so what I would advise, or at least, because I've heard that some people are kicking around the ideas of having maybe a yes-no, and other people are saying, well, maybe we should have 3 categories to vote on. And I think if you're expecting 50% of the people to vote on, say, 3 categories, you might just get a jumble that doesn't really tell you what everybody thinks. So I would think the first thing is maybe to try to hone it down to 2 things, so that you can at least have a greater chance of getting advice that might be more meaningful. So, and I don't know if this is where you're asking me some of my direction on this stuff or some of my opinion on it, but I know when things get into 3-way votes, they get a little more dicey about, what, if you're only listening for half the people and 16% of that half thinks this way and 30% of that half thinks this way, what are you getting out of it? So if you guys want me to try to hone it down to a yay or nay, that's one thing, or if you really do want me to try to come up with 3 different categories for the advice, just know that I think you may not hear from as many folks in a strong enough way that you'll feel, I guess, compelled by the advice.
Right. So, correct me if I'm wrong, which I suspect you will, is that it is a, yes, we're asking for, yes, you want us to take the bonded money that we have to build this civic building in the way that we have, the agency has talked about, and the yes vote gets that done. A no vote would mean
Spend it on something
that it would
Go to the
be,
project list.
it would be taking that bonded money and finishing or doing other urban renewal projects that are.
If that's the direction, is
Well,
there,
that's where
if
that's
there
where
is
I'm
an
probably-
actual project to be done to, or if there is a monetary value that you wanted to propose, that's another piece of it, I guess. I mean, how well does it want to be defined? Is it just yes or no on the building itself, or the idea of the civic building itself, or the mixed civic and library itself, versus none of that? Or is it, I mean, I guess, what do you want advice on from the population? Do you want to just say library alone, or no? Or do you want to say civic building mixed, or no? Or do you want to say civic building at this cost, at this place, or no? You see what I mean? How specific do you want me to be about, do you just want it to say, should we spend this much funds on a civic building out of the urban renewal or not? Or do you want me to say, you want this much funds for this particular project or not? So that's kind of where I would need to know what you guys, how much specificity you would want. Do you want the price in there? Do you want the actual project location in there, or no? Or, does that make sense?
Yes.
That makes sense.
To me, I see that as the price, the location, that it is,
What we're proposing to do.
that we're, yeah,
The
what we're
project.
proposing, the project that we're proposing to do
Okay.
of the civic building with the library and city hall in a combined civic building on 3rd Avenue.
Okay, combined.
That's my understanding, that you can't get terribly specific in, there would be a yes or no. We can't say A is the civic building and B is the project list.
Yeah.
You'd say yes or no on the question.
Yeah.
So it would really be a argument in favor of the measure to explain, from us probably as a body, to explain that a yes vote is this and a no vote is this, so they understand that the money's getting spent no matter which way they vote. It's just what we're wanting to know is what they want us to do, build this civic structure or do these other projects that we have on the list. That would come in an argument.
the explanation.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and people wouldn't, I mean, you wouldn't,
Could
I'm
you
taxed
put
with the burden now. We voted on that maybe a year ago to explain any measures that come up. So I have to actually do my best to be objective and explain, you guys did actually vote that in.
So you could put that piece in the explanatory statement then?
Correct.
It wouldn't all have to be as an argument favor like that some people don't even read. It would be an explanatory
Yeah.
statement? Perfect.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an argument for or against, it would just be explaining the effect of yes
That's what I
versus the
was
effect of no. And then, but the yes, no, I wanted to know how much you wanted in the ballot title, basically. And whether or not you wanted more than one, more than just an up-down, right, more than a binary. But it sounds like you want a binary just for price, location, and specifically the combined library and civic building on 3rd Avenue. That's what I'm hearing.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Since you raised it, Joe, that raises a question for me. Do we have a plan B if it does fail? I mean, what is the reason that we're sending this out to vote? We have some funds that are sitting in a bank, and we are asking voters how to spend that. Is that right? And so if they say no, not to this, will we keep sending referrals out until we get a yes?
No, in the explanatory statement, it would be yes is this project, B is other urban renewal projects on the urban renewal plan.
The library's on the plan.
The argument in the community is whether or not the urban renewal fund should be spent on a civic building. Tax increment financing should be used on something that produces a tax increment.
Well, I don't see the distinction between, we already have money that's sold in terms of bonds. And if we're going to ask voters, should we spend it for something that is on the list, which is a library? Library's on the list, right?
Not that the public had a voice in that, but yes, it is on the list.
Okay. So I don't see a distinction between